The year-end gala had reached its peak. Spotlights on the ceiling poured golden light across the entire banquet hall. Men and women in tailored suits and evening dresses drifted between tables with champagne glasses, laughing and chatting as if the world had never known a single ugly thing. I stood beside a pillar in the corner. The glass in my hand had already been empty 3 times. Renee walked over from the main table. She wore a deep red evening gown. Her makeup was so delicate she looked as if she was about to walk onto a stage and accept an award. Beside her was Damien Zhuang, the company's newly hired operations director. The way the two of them walked toward me side by side made my stomach twist. Renee stopped in front of me. From her bag, she pulled out a craft paper envelope. The company's gold-stamped logo was printed on the front. There was a smile on her lips. "Miles Fu, this is your year-end benefit." Several nearby colleagues looked over curiously. I accepted the envelope and tore it open. Inside was a divorce agreement. Already printed. On the signature line was Renee's name. The date was today. Damien stood half a step behind her, raised one hand, and pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses. The curve at the corner of his mouth could not be hidden at all. "Renee, what does this mean?" I lifted the agreement in front of her face. "Exactly what it says." Renee's tone was like she was reporting quarterly data. "The house is yours. The car is yours. The savings are yours. I only want the divorce." She said it lightly. Someone beside us inhaled sharply. I looked at her for 3 seconds. Then I took a pen from the inside pocket of my suit, turned to the final page of the divorce agreement, and signed my name. My handwriting was steady. Not a single stroke trembled. Renee's expression changed. She probably had not expected me to be this decisive. And this. From my briefcase, I took out another document and placed it before her. A resignation letter. Renee lowered her head and glanced at it. Her face changed completely. She was the company's deputy general manager. I was the marketing manager under her. This resignation letter was dated today. Its effective date was also today. "Have you lost your mind?" Her voice rose half a pitch. "No," I pushed the divorce agreement and resignation letter toward her together. "I accept your year-end benefit. Your company, your future, none of it has anything to do with me anymore." I turned and walked toward the banquet hall exit. Behind me, Renee shouted, "Miles Fu, you'll regret this." I did not look back. I pushed open the banquet hall doors. Cold winter wind rushed in. A waiter at the entrance opened the glass door for me. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Cora Zhou, deputy manager of the marketing department. There was only one sentence on the screen. "Brother Fu, your replacement was already decided 3 months ago." I stopped. Then I turned and looked back at the brightly lit banquet hall. Another message from Cora arrived. "The person Ms. Ren recommended to the board is Damien Zhuang." I turned off the screen and hailed a taxi. When I sat in the back seat, the driver asked where I was going. I gave him an address. The old apartment in the east of the city. The first home Renee and I bought when we married. When she said the house would be mine, that was the house she meant. After the taxi drove 2 blocks, my phone rang again. This time, it was Renee. I rejected the call. She called again. I rejected it again. Then she sent a message. "You knew already?" I did not reply. I deleted her contact. The taxi moved through the night. Neon lights swept past the window one after another. I leaned back against the seat and closed my eyes. 3 years of marriage. 5 years in the workplace. All cleared to zero in one night. When I arrived downstairs at the old apartment, I paid and got out. The voice-activated light in the corridor turned on. I took out my key and opened the door. The heating inside had not stopped. I removed my suit jacket and walked into the study. Then I turned on the computer. On the desktop was a folder. Its name was Takeover Plan. Creation date, 3 months ago. Inside were customer materials I had organized over the past 3 months. Every client who had worked with me. Every contract clause. Every contact person. Every phone number. I imported them all into my private cloud drive. Then I began deleting the backups from the company server one by one. Not one file left behind. At that moment, my phone vibrated again. Cora sent me a message. "Brother Fu, what will happen to the marketing department after you leave?" I replied with 2 words, "Wait." Then I turned off the phone, removed the SIM card, and threw it into the trash can. The next morning, I changed to a new phone and inserted a new SIM card. The first person to call was Cora. "Brother Fu, something huge happened." Her voice was urgent. "Say it." "The board held an emergency meeting this morning. Ms. Ren announced your resignation at the meeting. And then? Then she appointed Damien Zhuang on the spot to take over as marketing manager." "But," Cora paused. "But what?" "But less than 2 hours after Damien took over, 5 people in the marketing department submitted resignation letters at the same time." I froze for a second. I had not arranged this. I had not known about it either. "Who led it?" "No one." Cora's voice was emotional. "Everyone decided on their own. Brother Fu, we all remember how you treated us. If you're gone, we don't want to stay either." I stayed silent for a few seconds. "Have the resignation letters been submitted?" "Yes." What was Renee's reaction? Her face turned dark. She pressed all the resignation letters down. She said no one is allowed to leave within 3 days. Otherwise, it will be treated as absenteeism, and year-end bonuses will be deducted. I laughed. She already paid the year-end bonuses. "Brother Fu, what are you planning to do?" Cora asked carefully. "I have my own arrangements. Don't act impulsively yet. Wait for my message." After hanging up, I opened my computer and pulled up the customer files in my cloud drive. Then I started calling them one by one. The first call went to Mr. Song, procurement director of Hongyuan Group. He was our company's largest client. Their annual purchasing volume accounted for 40% of the marketing department's performance. The call connected. "Old Song, it's Miles Fu. Yuanzhou? I heard you resigned." "Yes." "Then why are you calling me?" "I want to talk about next year's cooperation." "Cooperation?" There was confusion in his voice. "Haven't you left?" "I can still cooperate after leaving. I'm preparing to start my own company. My terms will be 5 points lower than what you're currently getting." The other end went quiet. Then Mr. Song laughed. "Miles, I always knew you weren't a fish meant for a small pond. When do we talk in detail?" "Tomorrow afternoon." "Good. I'll wait for you." After hanging up, I called the second number. Then the third. Then the fourth. I kept calling until 10 that night. By the time I finished, every major client had been contacted. 70% of them agreed to renew next year's contracts with me. Then the doorbell rang. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Renee stood outside. She carried a bag in her hand. The corridor light was dim, so I could not see her expression clearly. I did not open the door. Renee rang the bell a second time. Then she started knocking. The sound was not loud. But it was urgent. "Miles Fu, I know you're inside. Open the door." I leaned against the doorframe and said nothing. The knocking stopped. A few seconds later, Renee's voice came from outside. The volume had lowered. It was not as sharp as before. "Miles, can you open the door? I just want to say a few words to you." I still made no sound. About 1 minute later, I heard the sound of a bag being placed on the floor. Then footsteps. Down the stairs. Slowly fading away. I waited a while before opening the door. Inside the bag was a newly bought down jacket. The tag was still attached. The price tag had been torn off. I carried the bag inside, closed the door, and casually placed it on the sofa. My phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. "Miles Fu, just you wait." It was Damien's number. I did not reply. I took a screenshot. Then I blocked him. The next afternoon, I met Mr. Song at a CAF. We talked for half an hour. The contract was settled. When I walked out of the CAF, Cora called again. "Brother Fu, something happened." Her voice was even more urgent than yesterday. "Damien held a department meeting today. He announced that he wants to restructure the marketing department. He said half the people will be cut." I stopped at the CAF entrance. Winter sunlight fell on my face. A little glaring. "Let him cut." "Brother Fu, are you serious?" "Serious. If he cuts 1 person, I'll take 1. If he cuts 10, I'll take 10. The other end went silent. Then Cora's voice changed. It became very soft. With a trace of gratitude. "Brother Fu, I understand." After hanging up, I looked up at the sky. The weather was good. Perfect for starting over. 3 days later, I registered my new company. I chose an office in a building in the west of the city. It was not big, a little over 200 square meters. But the rent was cheap and the transportation was convenient. Cora was the first to join. When she came in holding a box of office supplies, I was adjusting the projector. "Brother Fu, you really rented an office?" She looked around, eyes wide. That was too fast." Cora placed the box on a table. "Yesterday I was still worried you were acting on impulse." "I never act on impulse." I placed the projector remote on the table. "Cora, help me do something." "Tell me." "Contact everyone in the old marketing department who Damien cuts. Ask whether they're willing to come here." Cora smiled. "No need to ask. They're all willing." "Then go handle it." Over the next 2 weeks, people from the new company gradually arrived. Of the original 15 members of the old marketing department, 12 came to me. Of the remaining 3, 2 were Damien's own trusted people brought from outside. The last one was an old employee personally kept by Renee. I did not try to poach that old employee. He had worked at the company for 11 years. Mortgage. Car loan. Children. He could not bear the risk of changing jobs. I understood. On the 12th day, Mr. Song's contract was officially signed. The contract amount was 20% higher than the original purchase volume. After signing, Mr. Song put down the pen and smiled at me. "Miles, do you know why I'm willing to work with you?" "Why?" "Because you have a bottom line." He lifted his cup and took a sip. "Renee's new man, Damien, came to see me last week. He offered a price 8 points lower than yours. But I refused." I looked at him. "Why?" "Because he doesn't keep his word." Mr. Song set down his cup. "He promised a delivery timeline 1/3 shorter than your previous schedule." I asked him how he planned to do that. He said he had a way. But I checked. That so-called way was not reliable at all. Mr. Song stood and patted my shoulder. "In business, integrity matters more than price. Miles, remember that." I walked him to the elevator. When the elevator doors closed, Cora ran out of the office holding her phone. Her expression was complicated. "Brother Fu, guess who called me?" "Who?" "Ms. Run." Cora showed me the screen. The call log displayed Renee's name. Call duration, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. "What did she say?" "She asked about our company. She asked whether Mr. Song had signed with us." I looked at Cora. "What did you say?" I said yes. Cora put away the phone. "Brother Fu," Ms. Ren's voice sounded wrong. "How?" She sounded anxious. She said if I was willing to go back, she could give me a 30% raise. I laughed. Renee was anxious. Hongyuan Group was the company's largest client. Once Mr. Song's contract was gone, next year's performance would drop by at least 40%. She could not explain that to the board. "What did you say?" I said I wasn't going back. Cora's tone was firm. "Brother Fu, I remember how you treated me. When my mother was hospitalized last year, you stayed at the hospital for 2 days and 1 night. Ms. Ren didn't even make one phone call." I patted her shoulder. I did not say much. Back in my office, I opened the computer. There was a new email. The sender was the old company's legal advisor. The subject line was, "Explanation regarding non-compete agreement." I opened the email and read it from beginning to end. Then I laughed. Renee had forgotten. When she signed the non-compete agreement back then, she only had Damien sign it. Because Damien was someone she had poached from outside. She needed a non-compete clause to ensure he would not jump ship. But she had never asked me to sign one. I had worked at the company for 5 years. I had been promoted 3 times. With every promotion, she had never once mentioned a non-compete. Because in her eyes, I was her husband. No agreement was needed to restrain me. Now, that oversight had become her greatest loophole. I closed the email. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. "Is this Miles Fu?" A middle-aged man's voice came from the other end. Kind and pleasant. "Yes. I'm Calvin Liu from Hengxin Capital." I froze. Hengxin Capital. A top 3 domestic private equity fund. Why would they call me? "Mr. Liu, hello. Miles, I heard you came out and started your own company." "Yes. Not bad." There was a smile in Calvin Liu's voice. "Old Song from Hongyuan is an old friend of mine. He mentioned you to me. He said you're reliable." I waited for him to continue. "Miles, I want to meet you." "When?" "Tomorrow afternoon. Are you free?" "Yes." "Good. I'll have someone send you the address. After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair. Calvin Liu wanted to meet me. What did that mean? Cora knocked and entered. Brother Fu, someone outside is looking for you. Who? I don't know. A woman. Cora's expression was a little strange. She said her surname is Run. I stood and walked to the door. Through the glass, Renee stood in the corridor. She wore a camel-colored coat and carried a bag. Her eyes were faintly red. When she saw me, her lips moved. Then she walked quickly toward me and stopped in front of me. Miles, can we talk? Her voice was hoarse. Cora glanced at us, then silently returned to her desk. Come in. I led Renee into my office. She sat on the sofa. Her eyes moved around the office and finally stopped on the business license hanging on the wall. Registration date, 11 days ago. You really started a company. Her voice was very soft. When did you start preparing? 3 months ago. Renee's expression changed. 3 months ago. That was exactly when she had begun getting close to Damien. Exactly when she had begun speaking for him at board meetings. You were preparing all along. Her voice trembled slightly. Yes. Then why didn't you tell me? I looked at her. I said nothing. Renee stayed silent for several seconds. Then she lowered her head and covered her face with both hands. Miles, I was wrong. Her voice came through her fingers, muffled. I sat behind my desk and waited for her to continue. Damien, she lifted her head. There were tears in her eyes. He doesn't understand the market at all. He took over less than half a month ago and already lost 3 clients. Mr. Song signed with you. The board held a meeting today and asked me to explain the performance decline. She pulled a document from her bag and placed it on my desk. This is the company's new offer. If you are willing to come back, the marketing director position is yours. Your annual salary will double. And the company will give you 5% equity. I lowered my eyes and glanced at the contract. The terms were indeed generous. Then I pushed it back to her. Renee, do you think I'll sign this? Renee froze. Why? Did you forget what you did at the year-end gala? My voice was calm. You handed me a divorce agreement as a year-end benefit. In front of the whole company. Now you come to me and say you were wrong. And you want me to go back? Renee's hands began to tremble. Miles, you were what? I cut her off. Blinded by Damien? You felt I was useless and could be kicked away? Or did you think I would always stand there and wait for you like before? Renee's tears fell. Her mouth opened. No words came out. I stood and walked to the window. Traffic flowed below. My back faced her. Renee, leave. I will finish the divorce process as soon as possible. From now on, that is the only thing left between us. Behind me came the sound of a chair moving. Then footsteps. Slowly to the door. Then they stopped. Miles. Renee's voice came from the doorway. Are you really not giving me one more chance? I did not turn around. I did not answer. The door opened. Then closed. The office quieted. I returned to my desk. The contract she had brought was still there. Renee had not taken it with her. I picked it up and turned to the last page. Her signature was on it. The date was today. Beside it was a handwritten line. The handwriting was messy, as if written in a hurry. I read it carefully. It said, Miles, I'm sorry. I really know I was wrong. I closed the contract and placed it in the drawer. The instant the drawer shut, Cora knocked and entered. Brother Fu, Damien just posted something on Moments. She handed me her phone. On the screen was a photo. Damien stood in the company meeting room. Behind him was a whiteboard. On it were the words, Marketing Department Restructuring Plan. His caption read, Great waves wash away sand. Only gold remains. There were many likes below. Renee's profile picture was among them. I smiled faintly and returned the phone to Cora. Cora, help me check something. Whether Calvin Liu of Hengxin Capital has any business ties with Hongyuan Group. Cora froze. Then nodded. Okay. I'll check right away. She turned to leave. I called her back. One more thing. Tell me. Contact the old company's legal advisor. Ask whether the non-compete agreement Renee had Damien sign is still valid. Cora's eyes lit up. She seemed to understand something. Brother Fu, are you trying to, don't ask yet. Go check first. Cora nodded and quickly left my office. I sat alone behind my desk. Outside the window, the sky slowly darkened. City lights came on one by one. I opened the drawer and took out the contract Renee had left. I turned to the last page and looked at the handwritten line. Miles, I'm sorry. I really know I was wrong. I tore that page out. Slowly. I tore it into pieces. Then I threw the pieces into the trash can beside me. Wind slipped through the window crack and moved the curtain softly. I picked up my phone and messaged Cora. Found anything? A few seconds later, she replied. Found it. Calvin Liu's Hengxin Capital invested in Hongyuan Group 3 years ago. Amount is, a number followed. I looked at that number. My pupils narrowed slightly. Then I smiled. So that was it. Everything made sense. The next afternoon, I went to the appointment on time. Calvin Liu had arranged the meeting at a private club in the south of the city. A waiter led me through a long corridor. Abstract paintings hung on both sides. The lighting was as soft as melted butter. When the private room opened, Calvin was already seated inside. He looked to be in his early 50s, hair partly gray. He wore a dark gray cashmere sweater. On the coffee table before him was a gongfu tea set. He was rinsing the tea leaves. His movements were slow and steady. Sit. He gestured to the sofa opposite him. I sat. The sofa was soft, and half my body sank into it. Calvin poured a cup of tea and pushed it toward me. Old song said you're a straightforward man. So I won't waste words. He set down the teapot and crossed his hands over his knees. Miles, what is your company's biggest weakness right now? I thought for a moment. Funding. Correct. Calvin smiled. You have clients, people, and experience. But you don't have money. Without enough capital, you can't take large orders. With a client like Hongyuan, you can handle one. But the second one will break you. Every word was true. My new company currently relied entirely on Mr. Song's order. The cash on our books could only support 3 months of operation. I lifted the cup and took a sip. Mr. Liu wants to invest in me? Yes. Calvin took a document from the briefcase beside him and placed it on the table. Hengxin Capital can inject funds into your company. Amount, 50 million. For 30% equity. He said it calmly. As if he were discussing the weather. 50 million. 30%. That valuation was far higher than a company less than 20 days old should have. I looked at him. What are the conditions? No conditions. Calvin spread his hands. Only one requirement. Say it. Within 1 year, take 50% of your old employer's market share. He lifted his cup and looked at me through the rising steam. His gaze was quiet. But it carried an indescribable weight. Can you do it? I set down the cup. Why me? Because you understand that company better than anyone. Calvin placed his cup down. You worked there for 5 years. Every major client in the marketing department was opened by you. After you left, they lost 3 major clients. In Damien's first month after taking over, performance dropped 43%. He paused. When you were at that company, marketing performance grew every year. When you left, it collapsed. What does that prove? I waited for him to continue. It proves you were not a part in that company. You were its engine. Calvin stood and walked to the window. Outside was a carefully trimmed garden. He faced away from me, voice low. Take an engine out and put it in another car, and it can still run. But the original car, it becomes scrap. He turned around. What I want to invest in is you. Not your company. The room went quiet for several seconds. I reached out, picked up the investment agreement on the table, and read it from beginning to end. The terms were clean. No traps. I put the agreement back down. I'll sign. Calvin smiled. A very pleased smile. He returned to the sofa and poured me another cup of tea. Miles, do you know what I admire most about you? What? You don't hesitate. He lifted his cup and lightly clinked it against mine. In business, the hesitant never win. After signing the agreement, I walked out of the club. The sky had already darkened. My phone vibrated. Cora sent a message. Brother Fu, I found the non-compete agreement you asked about. How is it? Still valid. But what? There is a special clause. She sent a photo. I enlarged it and read the clause. Then I smiled. The agreement stated clearly that the non-compete restriction only applied to vice presidents and above who are unilaterally promoted or appointed by Party A. Damien's position was operations director, not vice president. In other words, that non-compete agreement had no effect on him at all. He did not even know he had signed something that could not restrain him. Now he sat in the marketing manager's position. That position was not restricted in the agreement either. I put away my phone and looked up at the sky. The city lights dyed the night pale orange. Renee had spent so much effort poaching this man. She had signed a useless agreement. Put him in a position he had no ability to control. Lost the company's largest client. And right now, she was probably still sitting in her office, exhausted, thinking about how to explain all this to the board. I hailed a taxi. I had just sat down when my phone rang again. This time, the caller was the old company's legal advisor, Old Fong. Manager Fu, I found what you asked me to check. Old Fong's voice was low, as if avoiding someone. Tell me. When Ms. Ren signed the non-compete agreement, there was one person she forgot. Who? Herself. Old Fong's voice dropped even lower. The agreement's Party A is the company, and Party B is Damien Zhuang. But as a senior executive of the company, Ms. Ren never signed any separate non-compete clause for herself. Which means if Ms. Ren leaves the company, she can go to any competitor at any time. There are no restrictions. I remained silent. Old Fong continued, but the key issue is that Ms. Ren has not left. She is still in her original position. And that agreement was only used by the company to restrain Damien. Now that Damien has taken your position, he can't violate a non-compete that doesn't bind him. I cut in. Because he was never bound in the first place. Correct. Old Fong sighed. Ms. Ren was too rushed when she signed that agreement. She only wanted to bring Damien in as quickly as possible. She did not examine the clauses carefully. Now that loophole cannot be patched. To patch it, Damien would need to sign again. But do you think he will sign now? I hung up. The taxi moved through the night. Neon lights flashed outside the window. I leaned back in the seat and remembered 3 months earlier, when Renee first proposed recruiting Damien in a meeting. I had reminded her, the non-compete must be carefully reviewed. The clauses must be clear. What had she said then? Don't worry about it. I have my own arrangements. Now, her arrangements had gone wrong. Very wrong. When the car reached my company downstairs, I paid and got out. I entered the office building. The elevator was empty. In the mirror, my expression was calm. The elevator doors opened. Cora was waiting in the corridor. Her face was tense. Brother Fu, something happened. What? Damien went to see Mr. Song this afternoon. Cora spoke quickly. He brought a new contract. The price was 15 points lower than ours. Mr. Song rejected him on the spot. But when Damien left, he said something. He said, Mr. Song, if you don't work with me, you will regret it. He also said he had some of your early materials. I stopped and looked at Cora. What materials? He didn't say clearly. Cora shook her head. But Mr. Song's expression changed. He asked me to contact you immediately. I took out my phone and called Mr. Song. It rang for a long time. No one answered. I called again. This time, it connected. Mr. Song's voice came from the other end. Low. Heavy. Miles, you know? I know. You don't need to worry about what Damien mentioned. Mr. Song paused. That batch of goods did have some problems back then. But I signed off on it. It had nothing to do with you. He's using that to threaten me because he's already desperate. I held the phone and said nothing. Miles, don't worry. Old Song, have been in business for more than 20 years. I've seen tricks like this too many times. His voice returned to normal. He wants to pressure me with this. He's still too young. After hanging up, I stood in the corridor. Cora looked at me. Brother Fu, what did Mr. Song say? He said it's fine. What about Damien? He will pay for what he did. I pushed open my office door and walked to the desk. I opened the computer and pulled up a folder. Its name was Damien Zhuang. There were 3 files inside. The first was the resume Damien submitted when he joined. The second was his resignation certificate from his previous employer. The third was a project performance table from his time there. I opened the third file and read from the beginning. On the third page, I found what I wanted. During Damien's time at his previous employer, he had handled a project related to Hongyuan Group. The project manager was Mr. Song. And the time of that project was 4 years ago. 8 full months earlier than the employment date Damien had written on his resume. I screenshotted that page and closed the folder. Cora was still standing at the door. "Brother Fu, what are you looking at?" "A flaw." I stood and picked up my coat. "Cora, help me do something." "Tell me." "First thing tomorrow morning, go to the business registry and retrieve a file." "Whose?" "Damien's previous employer." Cora froze for a second, then nodded. "Okay." I left the office. The corridor was quiet. Only the faint buzz of the overhead lights remained. I entered the elevator and pressed the first floor. Just as the doors closed, my phone rang again. This time, it was Renee. I looked at the name on the screen. Then answered. "Miles." Renee's voice carried tears. "Damien, what happened?" "He went to see Mr. Song this afternoon. After he came back, he argued with me in the office. He said I didn't trust him. He said I was working behind his back. He smashed things. Then he left." I leaned against the elevator wall. "No words. Miles, are you listening?" "Yes. What should I do?" There was pleading in Renee's voice. "The board called me again today. They gave me 1 month at most. If performance doesn't recover, I'll have to resign to take responsibility." The elevator arrived. The doors opened. The lobby lights were bright. I walked across the lobby and pushed through the glass door. Cold wind hit me head on. Standing on the steps outside, I said one sentence into the phone. "Renee, when you handed me the divorce agreement, did you ever think about today?" The other end went silent. Then came a very soft sob. I hung up. The night was deep. Neon lights flashed in the distance. I put my phone into my pocket and walked into the darkness. 3 days later, Damien made his move. He sent an email to all suppliers of Hongyuan Group. In the email, he said Yuanzhou Technology was an unqualified shell company and recommended that suppliers proceed with caution. When Cora sent me the screenshot, I was on the phone with Calvin Liu. "Brother Fu, he's insane." Cora's voice was full of anger. "How dare he send something like this?" I opened the screenshot and read it from beginning to end. Damien's wording was careful. He did not directly fabricate facts, but every sentence implied something. That my company had no strength. That our cash flow had problems. That cooperation with us carried risk. On the phone, Calvin laughed. "Miles, your popularity is pretty good. Less than a month after you left, your old employer is already sending black letters about you. What does that prove?" "It proves they're afraid of you." Calvin's tone was relaxed. "Afraid you'll steal their clients. Afraid you'll do better than them. Afraid you'll squeeze them out. Black letters are weapons of the weak. Remember that." After hanging up, I asked Cora to print the email. Then I called Mr. Song. "Old Song, Damien sent you that email?" "He did." Mr. Song snorted. "Not only to me. He sent it to every supplier in our company. I've received more than 10 calls already asking about it." "What did you say?" "I said Yuanzhou Technology is a company I personally inspected." "Qualifications?" "No problem." "Funding?" "No problem. If any supplier is too scared to cooperate after seeing that black letter, then they don't need to work with me again either." He paused. "Miles, you need to show Damien some color." "I know." After hanging up, I asked Cora to make copies of our business license, investment agreement, and bank statement. Then I drafted an email. The recipients were every supplier of Hongyuan Group. There was not a single sentence of defense. Only 3 documents. Business license, proving the company was legally registered. Investment agreement, proving Hengxin Capital had already injected 50 million. Bank statement, proving the company had sufficient funds. Then I added one sentence: Yuanzhou Technology welcomes everyone to visit our office at any time. At the end, I attached Calvin Liu's business card. Executive President, Hengxin Capital. Cora stared at the email. "Brother Fu, you're attaching Mr. Liu's card directly?" "Yes." "Will Mr. Liu be angry?" "He can't wait for me to do it." I clicked send. Less than 2 hours after the email was sent, Damien's black letter completely collapsed. Hengxin Capital's name carried too much weight. No one would doubt a company invested in by Hengxin. Mr. Song called and laughed loudly. "Miles, that move was beautiful. Using your investors' credibility to back your own company. You saved the cost of filing a lawsuit and got free publicity at the same time." Your reputation in the supplier circle is now even better than before that black letter was sent. I smiled faintly and said nothing. But I knew Damien would not stop here. Sure enough, early the next morning, Cora rushed into my office again. Her face looked worse than last time. Brother Fu, Damien made another move. What now? He went to the 3 people left in the old marketing department. Cora showed me a chat screenshot. The sender was an old employee from the old company's marketing department. His surname was Zheng. In the message, Mr. Zheng said Damien had spoken to him yesterday. He demanded all client materials from when Zheng had worked under me. Contract terms. Quotes. Delivery cycles. Every single detail. Damien had also made him sign a commitment letter promising not to disclose the conversation to outsiders. Zheng did not dare refuse. He still had a mortgage to pay. His child was still in school. I looked at the screenshot and said nothing. Cora grew anxious. Brother Fu, say something. Damien is digging out our old client materials. He wants to use our own quotations against us in a price war. I put down the phone. Cora, do you know how long Mr. Zheng has worked at that company? 11 years. Correct. 11 years. I stood and walked to the window. He handled over 100 clients in 11 years. Damien demanded that he hand over all materials. What do you think Mr. Zheng feels? Cora paused. He would feel Damien doesn't trust him. I turned around. Damien is making a fatal mistake. He thinks that by forcing employees to hand over documents, he controls clients. But he forgot something. Clients do business with people, not with files. I returned to the desk and picked up my phone. Send Mr. Zheng a message. What should I say? Tell him Brother Fu understands his difficulty. Tell him to hand over whatever he needs to hand over. Don't make things hard for himself. But also tell him Brother Fu's new company will always keep a position for him. Cora nodded and left. The office quieted. I sat in my chair and opened my notebook. On a blank page, I wrote 3 words, Damien Zhuang. Then I drew a line beneath it. At the end of the line, I wrote 1 word, wait. He would keep making moves. That was his character. When he met resistance, he would not stop. He would only push harder. Until he hit the wall. All I needed to do was wait for him to run into it himself. That afternoon, Renee called again. This time, I did not hang up. Miles, did Damien do something again? Her voice was tired. Ask him. I did. He won't say. Her voice dropped. But Mr. Zheng came to see me this afternoon. He said Damien forced him to hand over client information. He also made him sign a commitment letter. She paused. Miles, did you know about this? I did. What do you think? I leaned back in my chair. Renee, are you asking me for advice now? The other end went silent. Then her voice became very soft. I don't know. I really don't know what to do anymore. The board is pushing harder and harder. And Damien doesn't follow any rules at all. This afternoon, he even told me he wants to lower all product prices. He wants to use a price war to crush your new company. I laughed softly. A price war? Yes. He said he's confident. What confidence does he have? I picked up the investment agreement on the desk and turned to the funding clause. Renee, do you know how much cash reserve I have now? How much? 50 million. Cash. The other end inhaled sharply. Where did you get that much money? Hengxin Capital invested. Renee fell silent. Of course she knew what Hengxin Capital meant. It was an institution even her board had to look up to. Miles, what exactly are you trying to do? Her voice trembled. I'm only trying to run my own company well. Then why did you take all the marketing people? I didn't take them. My tone was calm. They came on their own. Renee, ask yourself. Why did the marketing department leave as soon as Damien took over? Why did they all come to me once I started a new company? The other end had no sound. Because you only see people by their usefulness. When they're useful, you hold them up. When they're not, you throw them away. The moment you handed me a divorce agreement as a year-end benefit, you told everyone something. In your eyes, people are only tools. I hung up. Outside the window, the sky was already dark. My phone rang again. This time, it was Cora. Her voice was urgent. Brother Fu, check the old company group. Damien just posted something. I opened the old internal company chat. Damien had posted a photo. In it, he stood in the meeting room with the 3 remaining employees of the marketing department. Behind them was the whiteboard with "Marketing Department Restructuring Plan." The caption read, "New team, new atmosphere. Great waves wash away sand. Only real gold remains." There were likes underneath. I scrolled down and saw a reply from Mr. Zhang. Only one sentence. "Manager Zhuang, I've handed over all the documents. Can I go home now?" The reply time was 7:40 p.m. overtime. Damien did not reply. I closed the phone. Then I said to Cora, "Book me a flight." "To where?" "Shenzhen." Cora froze. "Brother Fu, who are you going to meet?" "Someone Damien will never expect." I picked up my coat and walked to the door. Then I looked back at Cora. "After I leave, keep an eye on things here. If Damien pulls anything else, tell me immediately." Cora nodded. When the elevator door opened, my phone lit up again. A message from Renee. Very short. "Miles, can I see you?" I did not reply. I deleted the message. Winter in Shenzhen was much warmer than in the north. When I walked out of the airport, I was wearing only a thin coat. The person who came to pick me up was named Quentin Chin. He was my college classmate. He worked in supply chain finance in Shenzhen. We had been ordinary friends in college and had barely contacted each other after graduation. But 3 months earlier, I accidentally saw his name in an industry report. He was now co-founder of the largest supply chain finance platform in South China. I sent him a message. He replied instantly. Far warmer than he had been in college. "Miles, you finally came to Shenzhen." Quentin shook my hand at the arrival gate. He had gained some weight, but his eyes were much sharper than before. We got into his car and drove toward the city. As he drove, Quentin spoke. "I checked what you mentioned on the phone. How did it look?" "Very interesting." He glanced at me. When Damien Zhuang was at his previous company, he handled a project. The partner was Hongyuan Group. The person in charge of that project was Mr. Song, right? "Yes." Quentin smiled. "You may not know this. Damien took quite a few benefits from that project." I turned to look at him. Quentin continued, "He was responsible for coordinating suppliers. The procurement price approved by Hongyuan was 12% above market price. Damien split the extra amount with the supplier. Old Song investigated it at the time but didn't pursue it deeply. Because the project amount wasn't huge, and the supplier's goods were fine. So he simply removed Damien from the supplier list." I looked ahead at the elevated highway. "So when Damien went to threaten Mr. Song last time, Mr. Song only laughed. Because Mr. Song had been holding a handle on Damien all along." "Correct." Quentin nodded. "You know Old Song's philosophy. Leave a line for people so you can meet again someday. But Damien clearly doesn't understand that." The car entered a hotel parking lot. Quentin stopped the car and looked at me. "Miles, what are you planning to do?" "I haven't decided yet." "Then you didn't come to Shenzhen just to ask me about this, did you?" I looked at him. "I want you to connect me with someone." "Who?" Damien's direct superior at his previous company was surnamed Gu. He's now in Shenzhen and runs his own consulting company. "I want to meet him." Quentin froze for a moment, then smiled. "Miles, you back in college, I already thought you had a deep mind. I didn't expect it to get deeper." He took out his phone and searched through contacts. "I know the Mr. Gu you're talking about. His consulting company came to our platform for financing last year. I'll arrange it." That night, I sat in the hotel and read the materials Quentin sent me. Damien's project performance table from his previous company. This time, it was the complete version. Every project amount. Every supplier. Procurement price. Market price. All listed clearly. I spent 2 hours reorganizing all the data. At the end, I reached a conclusion. Damien had worked there for 2 years. The total value of projects he handled exceeded 60 million. Of those, 1/3 had obvious price abnormalities. The excess amount conservatively totaled over 2 million. I organized the data into a document. The next morning, Quentin took me to Mr. Gu's company. Mr. Gu looked a little over 40 and wore a dark blue suit. He received us in his office. Quentin made a brief introduction. After listening, Mr. Gu looked at me. "Mr. Fu, what is your relationship with Damien Zhuang? He used to be my colleague. And now? Now he is my ex-wife's current man." Mr. Gu's expression changed. He lifted his cup and took a sip. After several seconds of silence, he asked, "What do you want to know?" "I want to know whether Damien committed any violations when he worked under you." Mr. Gu set down the cup and walked to the window. His back faced us. A long time passed before he spoke. "Mr. Fu, may I ask a question first?" "Go ahead. Why are you investigating him?" I looked at his back. "Because he stole my client materials, used my quotation sheets to suppress my company, and spread rumors among suppliers that my company was a shell." Mr. Gu turned around. "Do you have evidence?" "Yes." I pulled up Damien's black letter screenshot and handed over the phone. Mr. Gu glanced at it. Then he sighed. "Mr. Fu, I'll tell you the truth. Damien did have problems when he worked for me. I investigated him, but I did not pursue it." "Why?" "Because I could only confirm everything after he left." Mr. Gu returned to his desk, opened a drawer, and took out a file. He placed it in front of me. "This is the internal audit report our audit department made after he resigned. It lists every violation he committed during his time at the company. 7 items in total. The amount involved is about this much." Mr. Gu wrote a number on the paper. I glanced at it. It was $500,000 higher than my own estimate. Why was this report never made public? Because the company didn't want the matter to blow up. Mr. Gu sounded helpless. When Damien left, he took a batch of clients with him. If we released this report, those clients would think something was wrong with our company. So the board decided to handle it internally. No prosecution. No public exposure. He pushed the report toward me. "Mr. Fu, I can give you this report. But I have one condition." "Say it." "Do not publicly disclose the source of the report." "I promise." I picked up the report and read it from beginning to end. Every violation had detailed evidence attached. Time. Amount. Person in charge. Supplier name. Everything was clear. I placed the report into my briefcase and stood. I shook Mr. Gu's hand. "Thank you, Mr. Gu." "No need to thank me." Mr. Gu looked into my eyes. "Mr. Fu, let me tell you the truth. Damien Zhuang does have ability. But he has one fatal flaw." "What?" "He is too clever." Mr. Gu paused. "Clever enough to believe he can fool everyone. In business, people like that are the most dangerous. Because you never know when they'll stab you in the back for profit." After leaving Mr. Gu's company, Quentin waited in the corridor. He looked at the briefcase in my hand. "You got it?" "I got it." We entered the elevator. Quentin pressed the first floor. "Miles, how do you plan to use that report?" "I'll keep it for now." "Keep it?" "Yes." I leaned against the elevator wall. "It isn't time yet. Damien is still making moves. I can roughly guess what his next move will be. I'll wait until he uses every trick he has. Until he thinks he's about to win. Then I'll take this report out. At that time, he won't even have a chance to fight back." Quentin looked at me. There was a complicated trace in his eyes. "Miles, you've changed." "How?" "Back in school, you never fought for anything. You yielded in everything. Now?" Quentin laughed softly. "Now you're like a hunter. Lying low in the grass, motionless, waiting for the prey to walk in front of you." The elevator doors opened. I stepped out. Quentin followed me. "Miles, one more thing." "What?" "Does your ex-wife know about Damien's past?" I stopped and looked back at him. "What do you think?" Quentin shrugged. "I don't think she knows. If she knew, she wouldn't have poached him. She definitely wouldn't have put the marketing department in his hands. Who would place a time bomb beside themselves?" I said nothing. We walked out of the hotel. Winter sunlight in the south was warm. I stood on the steps and took out my phone. A new message from Cora. "Brother Fu, when are you coming back?" "Tomorrow." "What happened?" "Damien held another meeting today. He announced that starting next week, all product quotations will be reduced by 20%. He said he wants a price war with you. He also said he'll make you shut down within 6 months. I smiled and turned off the phone. Then I looked up at the sky. Shenzhen's sky was blue. So blue it looked washed by water. I put my phone away and said to Quentin, "Let's go. Dinner is on me." Quentin froze. "You're not anxious?" "No." I walked down the steps. "If he wants a price war, let him fight one. He cut prices by 20%. I want to see how long he can hold on." Quentin hurried after me. "Miles, what exactly are you planning?" I turned to look at him. "Quentin, do you know Damien's biggest weakness?" What? He doesn't understand cost. I kept walking. At his previous company, all his quotes were market price plus 12%. Because he has never truly worked on the front line. He doesn't know what a product actually costs. Now he cuts prices by 20%. Do you know what that means? What? It means every order he sells loses money. Quentin stopped walking. I looked back at him. He thinks lowering prices will steal my clients. But he doesn't know my clients don't only care about price. They care more about who can supply steadily for the long term. He can do business at a loss for 3 months. But not half a year. When he can't hold on anymore, every client he stole with low prices will come back to me. Quentin laughed. A loud laugh. Miles, you really changed. What you're playing now isn't business competition. It's psychological warfare. I did not answer. I turned and walked toward the parking lot. Only one thought remained in my mind. Damien Zhuang, keep making moves. Every move you make is helping me send you away faster. The day after I returned from Shenzhen, Calvin Liu invited me to dinner. The location was still the same private club. The same private room. Only this time, there was no gongfu tea on the coffee table. There was an opened bottle of red wine. Calvin held a glass and leaned back on the sofa. Miles, you've been making quite a bit of noise lately. What does Mr. Liu mean? Don't pretend with me. Calvin set down his glass and took several sheets of paper from his briefcase. He placed them on the coffee table. I looked down. They were monitoring reports. Densely packed with data. Client names. Contract amounts. Delivery periods. Profit margins. All of them were orders recently signed by Yuanzhou Technology. 20 days. 7 clients signed. Total contract value over 20 million. Calvin tapped the papers. 5 of them were taken from your old employer. Do you know your old boss called me yesterday? I looked up. He called you? He did. Calvin swirled the wine in his glass. His name is Kenneth Yen. Hengxin Capital invested in his company. He's one of my portfolio founders. He complained to me for half an hour over the phone. Said you stole his clients. Stole his people. Stole his lifeline. I lifted my glass and took a sip. How did you answer? I said, Mr. Yen, you're coming to me now to complain? When your people handed him a divorce agreement as a year-end benefit, where were you? Calvin set down the glass and leaned forward slightly. I know Kenneth Yen very well. He's clever. But too clever for his own good. When he promoted Renee back then, I already felt something was off. Later he placed her in the general manager's seat. He said it was delegation of power. In reality, it was dumping responsibility. When the company performed well, he came out to claim credit. When performance was bad, he let Renee take the blame. He paused and looked at me. Miles, do you know what Kenneth said at the end of that call? What? He said, Mr. Liu, can you help me persuade Miles Fu, ask him not to destroy us completely? I smiled. Destroy them completely? The clients I took all came to me themselves. The people I took were all cut or pushed out by Damien. I never actively stole one order. I never actively stole one person. They offended clients and forced employees away themselves. Then they put the blame on me. I set down my glass. My voice was not loud. Mr. Liu, do you think that's fair? Calvin watched me for a few seconds. Then he laughed. He leaned back on the sofa and laughed loudly. Miles, I like your personality. When someone punches you, you don't scream. You wait until he finishes punching. Then when he is at his proudest, you knock him down with one blow. His laughter stopped. His expression turned serious. But I didn't call you here today just to talk about that. Then what? Kenneth Yen asked me a question over the phone. He asked why Hengxin invested in you. Calvin raised his glass and looked at me through the red wine. I told him it was because I once went through something similar to you. I froze. You didn't expect that, did you? Calvin set down the glass and leaned back. 15 years ago, when I was starting my business, my wife divorced me too. She disliked that I was poor. She disliked that I had no prospects. On the day of our divorce, she threw the agreement in front of me. She said, Calvin Liu, sign it and get out of this house. His voice was calm. As if he was telling someone else's story. I signed it. Then I got out. I lived in that house for 3 years. In the end, I left with only one suitcase. 5 years later, I founded Hengxin Capital. I raised my first round. 100 million. My ex-wife saw me on TV and called. She said, "Calvin, I want to see you." I said, "No need." Because the day I got out of that house, I had already made a decision. In this life, I would never turn back. The room was quiet for several seconds. Calvin stood and walked to the window, his back facing me. "Miles, do you know why I invested in you? Not because you're so amazing. Not because your company has enormous potential. It's because I saw my old self in you." He turned around. His eyes were bright. "I believe you won't disappoint me. Because people like us, after being betrayed once, we never lose again." I lifted my glass and drank it all. When I left the club, it was already dark. Cold wind slipped into my collar. My phone vibrated. Cora sent a screenshot. Damien's newest moments post. It was a signing ceremony photo. Damien stood in the center. Representatives of 2 new clients stood on both sides. The caption read, "2 new clients signed in a row. The price war is already showing results. Some people should be losing sleep." Someone commented, "Mr. Zhuang is mighty." Damien replied with a smiling emoji. I turned off my phone and hailed a taxi. I had just sat in when Mr. Song called. "Miles, did you see Damien's post?" "I saw it. I know those 2 clients." Mr. Song's voice carried laughter. "One is Huilong Trading in the north of the city. The other is Lida Industrial in the development zone. Those 2 are famous in our circle." "Famous for what?" "Famous for delaying payments." Mr. Song laughed softly. "Huilong's average payment cycle is 9 months. Lida is even more ridiculous. Once, they dragged payment for 14 months. Old suppliers like us don't do business with them. Damien signed them at 20% lower price. Think about it. 9 months before payment, and profit cut by 20%. What is he going to use to report performance to the company?" After hanging up, I leaned back in the taxi. To steal clients, Damien had completely ignored account period risk. He was using the company's cash flow to paint his own performance. The taxi drove through the night. Neon lights swept past outside. I closed my eyes and mentally reviewed every card in my hand. The internal audit report from Mr. Gu. Damien's violations at his previous company. Mr. Song's old leverage on him. And the useless non-compete agreement. Every single card was enough to make Damien suffer. But I still did not want to play them. I was waiting. Waiting for him to corner himself. The next morning, Renee came again. This time, she did not call first. She blocked my company entrance directly. When I stepped out of the elevator, I saw her standing in the corridor. She wore a black down jacket. Her hair was casually tied behind her head. Her makeup was very light. She looked completely different from the polished woman at the year-end gala. She carried a thermal bag. "Miles, I brought you breakfast." She handed it over. I did not take it. "What are you doing here?" "I want to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about between us." I walked around her toward the office. Renee followed me. "Miles, I know you hate me. But can you give me a few minutes? Just a few minutes." I stopped and looked back at her. Her eyes were red. But she did not cry. I opened the office door and let her in. Renee sat on the sofa and placed the thermal bag on the coffee table. Then she took out her phone. "Look at this." She handed it to me. On the screen was an email. Sender, Damien Zhuang. Recipient, all company board members. The email was long. The general meaning was that during Renee's management of the marketing department, there had been serious decision-making mistakes. The company had lost Hongyuan Group, a major client. He also said Renee had practiced favoritism by giving the marketing manager role to her ex-husband, me. As a result, once I left, the marketing department scattered. The wording was polite. But every sentence shifted blame. Shifted it to Renee. At the end of the email, Damien suggested that for the company's long-term development, the board should reconsider Renee's position. After reading, I handed the phone back. "He wants to kick you out." "Yes." Renee's voice was light. "After he sent this email yesterday, Kenneth called me early this morning. He said the board would meet next week to discuss whether I stay." I leaned back in my chair and looked at her. "You came to ask me for help?" "No," Renee shook her head. "I came to tell you, I regret it." Her voice began to tremble. "Miles, I really regret it. Damien is nothing but a fraud. He approached me for this position. He told me he could make the marketing department #1 in the country. He told me that after you left, he could stabilize every client. But in the end, he stabilized none. He lost the clients you signed. Now he signed a pile of rotten clients. And then he turned around and bit me on the board. Renee lowered her head and covered her face. Miles, how was I so blind? I threw away someone as good as you and believed in a fraud. The office went quiet. Sunlight came through the window and fell on the floor. I looked at her curled on the sofa. 3 years ago, she had been the most dazzling person in the entire company. Now she looked like someone whose strength had been drained away. Renee. I spoke. She lifted her head. There were tears in her eyes. When you handed me the divorce agreement, did you ever think about today? She froze. Then shook her head. No, at that time, I only thought Damien was better than you. He was younger. Sweeter with words. He knew how to make me happy. I thought that as long as I divorced you and got together with him, my life would become better. Her voice grew lower and lower. Now I know. Better and right are two different things. I stood and walked to the window. Traffic flowed below. My back faced her. Renee, leave. Miles, I said, leave. I turned and looked at her. You didn't come today because you regret it. You came because Damien is trying to take your position. You came to ask me to help you deal with him. Because you know only I can handle him. Renee's lips moved. No words came out. You've always been like this. When you need me, you come find me. When you don't, you throw me away. 3 years ago. And now. I walked to the door and opened it. Renee, leave. I'll finish the divorce as soon as possible. From now on, that is truly the only matter between us. Renee stood slowly and walked to the door. She looked at me. The tears in her eyes finally fell. Miles, I'm sorry. After saying those words, she turned and left. Her footsteps in the corridor were soft. Slow. Then gradually far away. I closed the door and returned to my desk. Cora knocked and entered. She glanced at the thermal bag on the coffee table. Brother Fu, this, throw it away. Cora picked it up and turned to leave. I called her back. Cora, check the business information for Huilong Trading and Lida Industrial. Check registered capital, legal representative, and lawsuits from the past 3 years. Cora froze. Brother Fu, why check those two? Those are the 2 new clients Damien signed. Cora's eyes lit up. I'll check right now. At the door, she turned back again. Brother Fu, one more thing. Say it. Mr. Zheng messaged me this morning. He said Damien spoke to him again yesterday. Damien asked him to submit all follow-up records he had not yet handed over. Mr. Zheng said he didn't dare refuse. But before handing them in, he copied everything. He said if you need them, he can give them to you. I nodded. Tell him there's no need to give them to me. Let him keep them himself. He'll need them. Cora left. I sat alone in the office and opened the screenshot of Damien's signing ceremony. In the photo, Damien stood in the center, smiling brightly. I enlarged his face and said silently, Damien Zhuang, keep smiling. You don't have much time left. Damien's price war lasted for an entire month. During that month, he signed 11 new clients. He posted on Moments more frequently than a microbusiness seller. Every week, Cora placed monitoring reports on my desk. Her expression became more serious each time. The more clients Damien signed, the tighter her brow became. But I was not anxious. I kept waiting. Waiting for one signal. That signal appeared on Tuesday of the 3rd week. That afternoon, Cora rushed into my office with her phone. Her expression was complicated. Brother Fu, Huilong Trading cancelled their order. How much? All of it. Cora handed me the phone. On the screen was an email from Huilong's procurement manager. The wording was polite. But the meaning was clear. They were terminating cooperation. All undelivered orders were cancelled. I looked at the email without surprise. Huilong's account period was 9 months. Damien had lowered their price by 20%. That meant every order would tie up company capital for 9 months while reducing profit by 20%. Every order was a loss. Damien probably thought he could hold out until payments came after 9 months. But he had forgotten something. The company did not belong to him alone. Finance would calculate. Renee would calculate. The board would calculate even more carefully. Brother Fu, you don't look surprised at all. I expected it. I put down the phone. Huilong's payment cycle is too long. After Damien cut the price, the profit margin could not cover the cost of capital. Every order he signed consumed the company's cash flow. Renee won't be able to hold out much longer. 4 days later, Lida Industrial cancelled its order too. After that, of the 11 new clients Damien had signed, 5 successively sent termination emails. Cora updated the data every day. Each update showed more clients lost by Damien. By the 5th Friday, only 3 of Damien's new clients remained. And what he lost was far more than those. Mr. Song called me, voice filled with laughter. Miles, I heard 2 of Damien's clients cancelled orders. More than 2. How many? 5. Mr. Song laughed until he almost coughed. I knew it. Those clients aren't easy to serve. Damien thinks every client is a trophy. He doesn't know some trophies bite. I smiled and did not speak. Then Cora came in with another report. Brother Fu, I found it. Huilong and Lida have a common shareholder. Name, Wyatt Wu. Wyatt Wu? Yes. Cora placed the report before me. Wyatt Wu and Damien Zhuang were college roommates. He also appears in Damien's old project records. So those 2 clients were not regular business development. I turned through the report. Damien used his own connections to sign loss-making contracts. Cora nodded. To make his performance look good. I closed the file. Now I understood. He used personal connections. Signed contracts that made the company lose money. And used them to paint performance. If the board knew, it would no longer be a simple position problem. That afternoon, Renee came again. This time she did not bring breakfast. Nor were her eyes red. When she entered my office, her face was calm. But beneath that calm was something I had never seen on her before. Despair. Miles, Damien went to see Kenneth again today. She sat on the sofa. Her voice was steady. He brought a new proposal. What proposal? He wants to apply for a special budget. Renee lifted her head and looked at me. 5 million. To subsidize the losses caused by the price cuts. He said if he gets 1 more month, he can steal all your clients back. I leaned back in my chair. Did Kenneth approve it? Yes. Renee's voice was light. He signed it in front of me. The office went quiet. Kenneth Yen was the company chairman. He was also the one who had pushed Renee into the general manager position. Now, in front of Renee, he signed Damien's proposal. Letting Damien continue the price war against me. A price war that had already caused the company losses for 2 months. Renee sat on the sofa and suddenly laughed. A bitter laugh. Miles, do you know what I'm thinking now? What? I'm thinking, what exactly did I do wrong? Renee lowered her head and looked at her own hands. For Damien, I divorced you. For him, I took all the blame in the company. For him, I offended the board. Now he bites me in return. And Kenneth not only refuses to help me, but signs his proposal. She lifted her head. There were tears in her eyes. Miles, do you think I deserve it? I did not answer. Renee stood and walked to the door. Then she looked back at me. Miles, I didn't come today to ask you to help me. I came to tell you, I'm preparing to resign. I froze. Resign? Yes. Renee nodded. I can't beat Damien. I can't beat Kenneth either. I once thought that as long as I worked hard enough, I could stand firmly in that company. Now I know, in Kenneth's eyes, I was never a true general manager. I was only someone to take bullets for him. After saying that, she opened the door and walked out. Her footsteps in the corridor were light. After a few steps, they stopped. Then her voice came from outside the door. Miles, you once told me to leave a line for people. I didn't listen then. Now I want to ask you, will you leave me a line? I sat behind the desk and looked at the half-open door. After several seconds of silence, I said, Renee, leave. Between us, that line was gone long ago. The door closed. The footsteps gradually faded. I stood and walked to the window. On the street below, Renee appeared in the crowd. She walked slowly, head lowered. Her black down jacket stood out among the people. She reached the roadside and hailed a taxi. The door opened. She got in. The taxi merged into traffic and vanished around the corner. I returned to the desk and called Cora. Cora, organize the business information reports on Huilong Trading and Lida Industrial. And the evidence connecting Wyatt Wu to Damien Zhuang. I need them tomorrow morning. Cora's voice carried tension. Brother Fu, are you making your move? Yes. I hung up and opened the drawer. Then I took out the internal audit report I had brought back from Shenzhen. I turned to the last page. It listed Damien's 7 violations at his previous company. Every item was supported by detailed evidence. I placed the report on the table beside the business information documents. These 2 files were Damien's ending. That night, I stood by the window. City lights gradually came on. My phone vibrated. A message from Mr. Song. Miles, I heard Renee resigned. I replied with one word. Then Damien is probably about to fly into the sky, right? Soon. When are you making your move? Tomorrow. Mr. Song replied instantly. Good. Then I'll wait for the show. I turned off my phone and looked at the 2 documents on the desk. The night outside grew deeper. Wind entered through the window crack and moved the curtains. Damien Zhuang. Your show ends now. The next morning, I went to my old company. The receptionist froze when she saw me. She had not seen me there for a long time. I walked through the corridor. The people in marketing looked at me with different expressions. Mr. Zheng stood from his desk. His mouth opened as if he wanted to say something. Then he swallowed it back. I nodded at him and walked straight toward the meeting room. Damien was inside, holding a meeting. He stood before the whiteboard with a marker in his hand. The board was packed with numbers. Price reduction strategy. Customer conversion rate. Market share percentages. He spoke with shining confidence. His voice carried through the glass door. I pushed open the door. The meeting room went silent. Damien turned. When he saw me, his expression changed for a split second. Then he quickly recovered. He placed down the marker and turned around, arms crossed. Miles Fu, what are you doing here? I walked to the conference table and placed 2 files on it. One was the business information report. The other was the internal audit report. Damien looked down. The smile on his face slowly disappeared. What do you mean? Read it yourself. Damien picked up the business information report and opened the first page. His face changed. The report clearly showed that Huilong Trading and Lida Industrial's common shareholder, Wyatt Wu, was his college roommate. ID number. Native place. University. Everything matched. He turned to the second page. His expression became uglier. It was a copy of the contracts he had signed. Contract amount. Delivery cycle. Payment terms. Every detail listed. Beside it was a financial analysis table. Each order's profit was negative. The total loss amount was marked in bold red. Damien's hand began shaking. Where did you get these? That doesn't matter. I pointed at the internal audit report. Look at this too. He picked up the second file and opened the first page. His pupils suddenly contracted. It was the record of his violations at his previous company. 7 violations. Amount involved, over 2 million. Each item had evidence. Time. Amount. Person in charge. Supplier name. All clear. His fingers gripped the edge of the report so hard his knuckles turned blue-white. You investigated me? Yes. I looked into his eyes. You stole my client materials. Spread rumors that my company was a shell. Signed rotten clients and loss-making contracts to paint your performance. You dragged the company into a price war swamp. Damien, when you did all this, did you ever think this day would come? The meeting room was so quiet that the clock on the wall could be heard. Everyone in the marketing department had stood up outside, watching through the glass wall. Damien slammed the report onto the table and raised his voice. Miles Fu, you think this is enough to bring me down? Let me tell you. Kenneth Yen is on my side. Half the board stands behind me. These papers? One word from me and they get buried. I looked into his eyes and said one sentence. What if I send them to Hengxin Capital? Damien froze. Of course he knew Hengxin Capital. That was his employer's investor. The most influential shareholder on the board. If Hengxin saw this report, if they learned that the operations director of their invested company was signing loss-making contracts, if they learned this man used personal connections to sign rotten clients and drag the company into losses, then this would not be merely about losing a position. Hengxin would demand an explanation from Kenneth Yen. And Kenneth would push Damien out without hesitation. Damien's face changed from iron blue to ash gray. His mouth opened. He wanted to say something. But not one word came out. I picked up the files and turned toward the door. At the doorway, I stopped and looked back. Damien, do you know what you did wrong? He did not answer. What you did wrong was not competing with me. It was thinking business depends on tricks. Stealing documents. Spreading rumors. Signing garbage clients to decorate your performance. But you forgot. Business depends on people. You forced my people away. You offended Mr. Song. You treated Mr. Zheng like a tool. There isn't a single person around you willing to help you. I opened the door and walked out. Behind me came Damien's voice, squeezed through his teeth. Miles Fu, just you wait. I did not look back. In the corridor, the marketing department automatically made way for me. Mr. Zheng stood beside his desk. He looked at me. His lips moved. Then he nodded. I walked out of the building. Winter sunlight fell on my face. Warm. That afternoon, news of Damien's suspension spread through the entire circle. When Cora saw it in the company group, she was so excited she almost dropped her phone. Mr. Song called, voice filled with laughter. Miles, you finally moved. I heard Damien smashed things in the office after he was suspended. That's his business. I leaned back in my chair. Aren't you afraid he'll retaliate? What cards does he have left? Mr. Song paused. True. He's used all his cards. Price war. Black letters. Threatening clients. He used everything he could. Now even Kenneth Yen can't protect him. After hanging up, Cora knocked and entered. Brother Fu, the board officially approved Ms. Ren's resignation. When? This afternoon. Cora handed me the phone. On the screen was an internal announcement from the company board. Only 2 lines. Renee Ren resigns from the general manager position, effective immediately. The general manager role will be temporarily assumed by Kenneth Yen. I looked at the notice and said nothing. Renee had still left. She had once sacrificed everything for that position. Marriage. Trust. Everyone who had truly cared about her. In the end, she got nothing. Cora looked at me carefully. Brother Fu, do you feel what? That Ms. Ren is a little pitiful. I set the phone down. Cora, pity is not a reason to excuse wrong choices. When she chose Damien, no one forced her. When she handed me the divorce agreement, no one forced her. Everyone must pay for their own decisions. Cora nodded and left. I sat alone in my office as the sky outside gradually darkened. My phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. I answered. A man's voice came from the other end. Low, with a trace of fatigue. Is this Miles Fu? Yes. I'm Kenneth Yen. I straightened slightly. Kenneth Yen. The company chairman. Damien's last backer. His personal call surprised me. Mr. Yen, what can I do for you? Kenneth stayed silent for several seconds before speaking. His voice was slow, as if he was weighing every word. Miles Fu, I'm calling to ask one thing. Ask. What do you plan to do with the internal audit report in your hands? I leaned back. Mr. Yen, what do you think I should do? The other end went silent again. Then Kenneth sighed. Miles, I'll be honest. I no longer want to protect Damien. The rotten contracts he signed dragged the company into losses. I can no longer hold back the board. But if that report is made public, the company will be seriously affected. Can you, he paused. Can you give me some face? I laughed. Kenneth Yen, a man who had spent more than 20 years in the business world. A man used to others begging him. Now he was personally calling me and asking me for face. After several seconds of silence, I said, Mr. Yen, I can keep the report private. But I have one condition. Say it. Damien must leave the company. And after leaving, he may not work in any business related to mine. Kenneth agreed. Fine. His voice carried exhaustion. Miles Fu, you are much more formidable than I imagined. After hanging up, I stood and walked to the window. Night had fully fallen. City lights spread across the earth like a golden net. My phone vibrated again. Mr. Song sent a message. Miles, Damien just posted on Moments saying he was framed by villains. Attached was a picture of his things packed into cardboard boxes on his office desk. I smiled and did not reply. He had not been framed by villains. He had been pushed to this point by his own choices. From the day he spread rumors with a black letter, from the day he signed the first rotten contract, from the day he betrayed Renee, his ending had already been written. I was only the person who delivered that ending to him. On the day Damien completed his departure procedures, the entire old company seemed to breathe again. Cora posted a meme in our group chat, and replies lined up instantly below it. That morning, Mr. Zheng messaged me. He said when Damien left, he did not even close his office door. His things filled 2 cardboard boxes. He carried them away alone. In the elevator, he ran into coworkers. No one greeted him. I replied, Mr. Zheng, when are you coming over? He replied instantly. Brother Fu, I start next Monday. That evening, Mr. Song invited me to dinner after hearing Damien was gone. The place was still the private club. But this time, he was the host. Holding his glass, Mr. Song smiled until the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes piled up. Miles, you really were ruthless. You left him no way out. I lifted my glass and clinked it against his. When he stole my client materials, he didn't leave me a way out either. That's true. Mr. Song drank and set down his glass. His expression became more serious. Miles, now that Damien is gone, your old employer has no one left. What are you planning to do? Nothing. Mr. Song froze. Nothing? Yes. I put down my glass. The marketing department has scattered. The general manager resigned. The operations director was fired. What they have left is a group of employees who don't know what to do. I don't need to do anything. The market will make the decision for me. Mr. Song was silent for a few seconds. Then he laughed. Miles, that sentence is truly ruthless. And truly correct. He drank another sip. Your old employer really is a pile of loose sand now. I heard Kenneth has been searching everywhere for someone to take over the marketing department. But no one is willing to go. Why? Because everyone knows the marketing people followed you. The clients followed you. Whoever takes that role now is only going there to take blame. Mr. Song set down his cup and looked into my eyes. Miles, do you know what that means? What? It means from now on, no one in this circle can compete with you. I lifted my glass and said nothing. Mr. Song was right. On the 3rd day after Damien left, Yuanzhou Technology signed 4 more new clients. 2 of them were clients Damien had previously lured with low prices. After he left, they called us themselves and asked whether they could cooperate. When Cora answered the phone, she smiled so hard her mouth nearly reached her ears. By the 5th day, the company's cash on hand had doubled compared with last month. Calvin Liu called, his tone filled with admiration he could not hide. Miles, well done. In just a few months, you've turned an entire industry upside down. I was right to invest in you. I smiled and did not say much. Calvin paused and added, one more thing. What? Kenneth Yen called me again yesterday. He said he wants to meet you. I held the phone and said nothing. Kenneth Yen. The chairman of the old company. The man who had promoted Damien into marketing. Why did he want to see me? The next afternoon, Kenneth sat on the sofa in my office. He was around the same age as Calvin Liu, early 50s. But he looked much older. The wrinkles around his eyes were deep. Half his hair was white. He wore a dark gray suit and looked around my office. Miles Fu, this place isn't big. Enough is enough. That's true. Kenneth nodded. He lifted the teacup on the coffee table and took a sip. Then he set it down and looked at me. I'm not here to talk business today. Then what? Renee. I leaned back and waited for him to continue. After Renee resigned, she stayed at home for almost a month. Kenneth's voice was steady, as if reporting work. She doesn't go out. She doesn't see anyone. She doesn't even answer calls. Her father called me and asked what happened to her. I told him she was just tired. Kenneth lifted his teacup again. His fingers rubbed the rim. Miles, I know you hate her. But I want to tell you that Renee is not a bad person. She only wanted too badly to prove herself. I looked at Kenneth. Prove what? That she did not rely on me to get that position. Kenneth put down the cup and looked out the window. When Renee took the general manager position, everyone in the company said she got there through connections. She took those words to heart. So she worked desperately, trying to prove she was capable. But she was too anxious. So anxious that she took the wrong road. He turned back to me. Miles, do you know why she chose Damien? I did not answer. Because Damien told her he could help take the company public within a year. Renee believed him. She thought that once the company went public, everyone would shut up. No one would say she rose by connections again. So for that goal, she was willing to do anything. Including divorcing you. Kenneth's voice was low. But every word was clear. The office fell silent. Sunlight came through the window and landed on the floor. Bright patches of light. After a long time, I spoke. Mr. Yen, are you saying all this so I'll forgive her? Kenneth shook his head. No, I only want you to know the truth. Renee made mistakes. She should bear the consequences. But she is not the kind of person you think she is. He stood and walked to the door. Then he looked back at me. Miles Fu, you're a smart man. You should know, hating someone is actually punishing yourself. He opened the door and left. I sat alone in the office. The sunlight outside slowly shifted. Then I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. I found a number I had not called in a long time. The owner of that number was Renee's father. I pressed dial. The phone rang for a long time before connecting. An old man's voice came through, surprised. Miles? It's me, Uncle. The other end stayed silent for several seconds. The old man seemed unsure how to address me. After the divorce, I was no longer his son-in-law. Miles, why are you calling? Uncle, I want to ask you something. Ask. Renee, I paused. Is she okay? The other end went silent again. Then came the old man's sigh. Miles, the fact that you can ask that means you still have her in your heart. Uncle, no need to explain. He interrupted me. Miles, I know Xiao Wei did wrong. She wronged you, and she wronged herself. But right now, she really is in a bad place. The old man's voice grew hoarse. She locked herself in her room. She won't go out. She won't eat properly. I told her to go outside and walk around. She refused. Her mother cried several times from worry. His voice trembled. Miles, I know I have no right to ask you this. But can you go see her? I held the phone. No words. Sunlight reflected off the screen and stung my eyes. Uncle, I understand. I hung up and sat in the chair, looking out the window. Traffic flowed below. People came and went. Everyone busy with their own lives. I picked up my keys and stood. When I walked out of the office, Cora ran into me in the corridor. Brother Fu, where are you going? Out for a bit. I entered the elevator and pressed the first floor. Just as the elevator doors closed, I saw a trace of understanding appear on Cora's face. She had probably guessed where I was going. I stepped out of the building. Cold wind rushed toward me. I hailed a taxi and gave an address. The old apartment where Renee and I had lived after we married. She said the house was mine. But after the divorce, I had never returned there. The taxi moved through the streets. The plane trees along the road had lost all their leaves. Their bare branches pointed at the sky. The car turned into the familiar alley and stopped downstairs. I paid and got out. Then I stood below and looked up at that familiar window. The window was closed. The curtains were drawn tightly. I entered the building and went upstairs. The voice-activated corridor light turned on, giving off a dim yellow glow. Standing at the door, I raised my hand and knocked. No sound came from inside. I knocked again. This time, footsteps sounded inside. Soft. Slow. They reached the door and stopped. Then the door opened a crack. Renee stood behind it. She wore gray home clothes. Her hair was messy, scattered over her shoulders. Her face looked as if someone had drained all strength from her body. When she saw it was me, she froze. Her lips moved, wanting to speak. But no word came out. Something gathered in her eyes. She stepped back half a pace. The door opened wider. The corridor light fell across her face. I saw her tears fall. One drop. Then another. Onto the doorframe. Onto her hand. She opened her mouth. Her voice was very soft, as if afraid to wake something. Miles, I said nothing. I only stood there and looked at her. Renee raised her hand and wiped her tears with the back of her hand. But the more she wiped, the more they fell. She lowered her head. Her shoulders began to shake. A long suppressed sob squeezed from her throat. Why did you come? I stood in the doorway and looked at her. Wind blew through the corridor with winter's chill. After several seconds of silence, I walked inside. The apartment was dark. The curtains were shut tight. Takeout boxes were piled on the coffee table. Clothes were scattered across the sofa. The air was heavy and stale. Renee followed behind me quietly. She sat on the sofa, lowered her head, and twisted her fingers together. Your father called me. I sat across from her. Renee's shoulders shook. He said you've locked yourself at home. You don't go out. You don't see people. You don't eat properly. She still did not speak. Her head lowered even further. Her hair covered her face. After a long time, her voice came from behind it. Very soft. As if drifting from somewhere far away. Miles, am I a failure? I looked at her and did not answer. I married ambition, thinking it could help me. It couldn't. Her voice trembled. I chose Damien, thinking he could help me. He betrayed me. For them, I divorced you. In the end, one used me as a shield, and the other used me as a stepping stone. She lifted her head. Her eyes were swollen red. Her voice was hoarse. Miles, you were so good to me back then. Why didn't I cherish it? I sat across from her, hands resting on my knees. After several seconds of silence, I spoke. Renee, you're wrong. Renee froze. Your biggest mistake was not choosing the wrong person. It was that you never believed in yourself. Renee stared at me. You always felt you needed to rely on someone else to succeed. Rely on Kenneth. Rely on Damien. Rely on anyone who could help you. But you never thought about relying on yourself. I looked into her eyes. You sat in the general manager position for 5 years. You built the marketing department's performance. You approved the contracts. You signed off on the clients. Those things were not given to you by Kenneth. Nor by Damien. You earned them yourself. Renee's lips began to shake. But you never believed that. You always thought people would say you rose through connections. So you desperately tried to prove yourself. Proved it so hard that you lost yourself. Renee covered her face. Her shoulders shook violently. Her voice came through her fingers, broken. Miles, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I stood and walked to the window. Then I pulled open the curtains. Sunlight poured in at once. It lit the entire room. Outside, people moved along the street. The breath of life came in through the window and diluted the stagnant air. My back faced her. My voice was calm. Renee, you don't need to apologize to me. The person you wronged most is yourself. Behind me came her sobs. After a long time, the sound gradually quieted. I turned and looked at her. What are you going to do? Renee lifted her head. Her eyes were still red. But there was something more in her gaze now. Something that had been gone for a long time. Strength. I want to start over. Her voice was soft. But firm. But this time, I want to rely on myself. I looked into her eyes. There was no old arrogance inside them. No despair either. Only a calmness, like still water. I nodded. Good. I turned toward the door. Renee called after me. Miles. I stopped but did not look back. Thank you. Her voice came from behind me. Thank you for coming to see me today. Thank you for saying those words. Thank you for letting me know that I can still start over. I opened the door and walked out. The voice-activated light in the corridor turned on. Dim yellow light fell across the stairs. I walked downstairs and pushed open the building door. Cold wind hit me head-on, carrying the clean sharpness unique to winter. The sunlight was good. It shone on the street. On the plane trees. On every passerby's face. I stood at the entrance and took a deep breath. Then I took out my phone and called Cora. Cora, draft a recruitment notice for me. What position? Marketing director. Cora froze. Brother Fu, you want to hire someone? Yes. Do you have a target candidate? I looked up at the window whose curtains had been reopened. Sunlight reflected off the glass, bright and sharp. Yes. 1 month later, Yuanzhou Technology held its year-end celebration at a hotel in the west of the city. The banquet hall was not large, but it had been decorated with care. Golden balloons hung from the ceiling. Flowers and fruit were arranged on the tables. The employees sitting below had tripled compared with when the company had first been founded. Calvin Liu sat in the first row. Mr. Song sat beside him. Quentin Chin had flown in from Shenzhen specially and sat in a corner with a glass of orange juice. I stood on stage with a microphone. The audience quieted. Everyone looked at me. Renee sat in the last row. She wore a simple white shirt. Her hair was tied into a ponytail. She looked thinner than before. But her eyes were bright. I looked at her. She looked back at me. Then she nodded. I withdrew my gaze and looked at everyone below. Everyone, today is Yuanzhou Technology's first year-end celebration. I want to take this chance to say a few words. The hall grew quiet. 1 year ago, I stood in another banquet hall. Someone handed me a divorce agreement as my year-end benefit. At the time, I thought that was the worst day of my life. A few people below laughed softly. The kind of laugh that carries a little ache behind it. But looking back now, that day was actually the best day of my life. Because without that day, I would not be standing here. Without that day, I would not know there were so many people around me willing to walk with me. My gaze swept over every face below. Cora sat in the third row, eyes already red. Mr. Zheng sat beside her, posture straight. The marketing department colleagues sat together in matching company uniforms. Every pair of eyes was on me. So what I want to say is, the hardest moment of your life may also be your best moment. Because only in your hardest moment do you learn who you really are. You learn who is real and who is fake. And you learn where you should go. Applause sounded below. Soft. But neat. I raised a hand to quiet them. Today, I want to announce 2 things. The banquet hall quieted again. First, Yuanzhou Technology's performance target for next year is 3 times this year's. A burst of cheers exploded below. Cora screamed once, then quickly covered her mouth. Mr. Song laughed loudly and patted Calvin Liu on the shoulder. Calvin lifted his glass, smiling, and nodded at me. I raised my hand again. Second, I looked toward the last row. Everyone's gaze followed mine. Renee sat there. Her body tensed slightly. I want to introduce a new colleague to everyone. I raised my hand and pointed to the last row. Yuanzhou Technology's new marketing director, Renee Run. The hall was silent for a brief second. Then applause rang out. Cora was the first to stand and clap. Then Mr. Zheng. Then everyone from the marketing department. One after another, they stood. The applause grew louder and louder. Renee stood in the last row. The light fell on her face. Her eyes were red. But there was a smile on her lips. She looked at the familiar faces below. The people she had once led. The people she had once lost. The people who had accepted her again. Her mouth opened as if she wanted to say something. But in the end, she only bowed deeply. The applause lasted for a long time. I stood on stage and looked at Renee in the last row. Then my gaze moved past her to the banquet hall doors. Beyond the doors was a corridor. At the end of the corridor was an elevator. The elevator led to the first floor. The first floor led to the street. And the street led to every corner of this city. In every corner, someone was starting over. I withdrew my gaze and picked up the glass on the table. Then I raised it to everyone below. Everyone, Happy New Year. Everyone below lifted their glasses. Renee also raised hers. Her gaze passed through the crowd and landed on me. Then she smiled. A very light smile. Like the first spring wind after winter. Holding my glass, across the crowd, I smiled too. Outside the windows, city lights flowed through the night like a golden river. Slowly. Toward the distance. A new year had begun. That's all for today's story. Remember to subscribe and leave a comment.